put your thing on the chair here. You can just go.
Just make sure I have my volume down so that we don't... All right, ready? Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you, those of you who came early. Nice to have you here on time. That's really great. And good evening, everybody from YouTube. We have an exciting session for you this evening. We're going to be talking about rubies and other corundums. And this is one of the sessions that we're doing at the National Design Center as part of our Gem Jamming series. And this is run by myself and Tanja. Tonight, Tanja Sadow, the founder of the school, will be talking all about rubies and corundum. Tanja has 40 years of experience in the jewelry industry. She has worked in every facet of the industry, from retail to wholesale to design to manufacture to gemstones so she brings a lot of experience and a lot of sort of fun insight into all of these materials. And she's also been doing some interesting research on sort of pricing and value and things like that she's happy to share with you this evening. This is one of the many sessions that we run here at the National Design Center as part of the Gem Jamming program. We have sessions like tonight that spotlight a specific gemstone. We also have sessions that talk about jewelry manufacturing, how it's designed, how it's made on computer, how it's made in a factory, all of those kinds of interesting things that give you behind the scenes views of what happens in our industry. And then we also have some interesting topics that are maybe a little bit more general. So things like how to clean your jewelry, or should you buy a synthetic gemstone or not. Those sorts of things that are interesting to know, but maybe not too focused in on one particular gem or one particular manufacturing style. So we hope you enjoy all of these, and before we get started, I wanted to share with you a short piece of information about our school, sort of who we are. We're the only school in Singapore specialized in jewelry, but rather than have me tell you more about the school, I have a short 2-minute video to do that for me.
Since 2007, the Jewelry Design and Management International School has given thousands of people the confidence to create quality jewelry. Established in Singapore, in the heart of Southeast Asia, JDMIS has conducted courses for some of the world's most distinguished jewelry companies, as well as passionate amateurs and those ready for a career in the jewelry industry. Specializing in the jewelry arts, JDMIS provides exceptional education in jewelry design, fabrication, gemology, and business. The tools that students receive from JDMIS on their first day have traveled with many along the road of jewelry making success. Tanja Sadow, founder of the JDMIS, is an award-winning jewelry designer and renowned jewelry educator with over 30 years of experience training the jewelry industry. Tanja, with her team of expert jewelry artists and instructors, created the JDMIS curriculum to be comprehensive yet flexible. Small class sizes, personalized attention, and an unmatched support network ensure that each participant leaves with the knowledge, skill, and confidence to succeed in the jewelry industry. Designed for the jewelry trade, training at JDMIS is fast-paced and packed with useful practical information. But with a diverse range of participants, courses are also great fun. Learning at their own pace, participants study the latest information about gemstones and jewelry styles. They gain confidence using the best of traditional and contemporary techniques and learn how to apply each of these skills to their businesses. All JDMIS courses are completely modular, and they can be taken individually. For each skill they learn, students receive a certificate and can combine these skills to receive a comprehensive diploma qualification. Graduates in more than 42 countries delight friends and relatives with their unique creations. Many graduates showcase their pieces online, and JDMIS's brightest stars operate their own successful retail jewelry businesses, designing and producing exquisite jewelry that enchant. The possibilities are endless. What will you create?
Fantastic. So I'm going to begin with our presentation tonight. Is everybody seated comfortably? Everybody likes rubies and sapphires? So either you love them and you've come to listen to more about them, or maybe you think they're highly overrated. So some people think they are, because especially rubies can be very expensive. So we're going to find out now a little bit more. Ruby and sapphires, they're all from the same family. So initially, let's talk about ruby, and we're going to look a little bit on the history and see how far back ruby goes. And we're going to find out why ruby is so expensive. There is actually a reason for it being expensive. Of course, what helps is to know the value factors, the color, the clarity, the cut, and the carat weight. We're going to look at some of the sources, because people think that rubies only come from certain places. Actually, nowadays, we are finding a lot of new locations for all kinds of gemstones. We find 80 new minerals every year, which is really exciting. And we find not new minerals, but the same minerals that we've known forever, but we find them in new locations as well. So it might be that you are not aware that we're finding rubies in other places. And we'll talk about some unusual specimens, which are truly astounding. And then I'm going to give you some suggested pricing. Now, suggested pricing means there are price guides out there. A lot of different people collecting information. These people are collecting information on a day-by-day basis, and they're seeing what happens, how the prices fluctuate, and then they propose those prices in price guides. And a guide is only a guide, right? So whether your piece of jewelry, or whether your ruby, or whether it sells for that price or not, is debatable. It depends where you're buying it, what country you're buying it, what the GST is, and all kinds of other factors. But a guide just kind of gives us an idea, all right? And as a basic idea, it's okay to actually see what's going on there. So I'm going to give you the updated ones that I have fished out just recently. So then we're going to talk about the corundum. And corundum is the species name. And so ruby is one variety of corundum. And then we have all of the others. So we're going to talk about what are the others, what are the differences in all the different varieties, and we'll look at also some unusual specimens that come in corundum, and also the suggested pricing for those. All right, so beginning with the history of ruby. I think everybody knows that some of the most beautiful rubies have come from Burma. And I think that's something that is quite well known. It's because the first discoveries were found there from about 2500 BCE. All right, so that is a very long time that we have been finding rubies in this location. The ones that are found in other locations are much more recent, and maybe they're not being highlighted, and so everybody thinks of the Burmese ruby. So since they were known for such a long time, all of the best rubies that came out from Burma were always reserved for the rulers, for the Maharajas, for princes, for kings, and anyone who had plenty of money. They were definitely the most prized of possessions, even in those days when we had emperors, etc. It's also something that has been talked about in the Bible, so it just proves that it goes back a very, very long way. And we have ancient Sanskrit on all kinds of precious gems, and ruby is one of the most important that is revered and talked about also there. And ruby has been called, since the beginning, it's been called Ratnarvja. And this is actually a word that means the king of gems. Now, it's an ancient Ceylonese word, but I always think of ruby as female for some reason. I think it's a she, I think it's a queen of gems, but actually no, a lot of people like to think of it as the king of gems. So other things that are very important historically is that in ancient times, ruby was more highly prized than diamond, and this was made clear by Pliny. Pliny the Elder was a very famous sage and a scholar who wrote books very early on, and one of his books, which was called Natural History, actually mentioned the beauty of ruby and how durable ruby was. And of course, people did read it, people saw it, and people began to appreciate ruby all the more so. And if you look at these two pictures right here, this is the Black Prince's ruby. That's the stone that's right in the center of the crown jewels in England. And it's been called the Black Prince's ruby forever. But back in, I think it was the very early 1900s, they discovered that actually it wasn't a ruby at all. It was a huge spinel. Yes, it is 170 carats, this big one here, 170 carats, the one right in the center. And it's a very beautiful stone, but it's not a ruby, and yet it was called ruby. And that's because very early on, anything red was called a ruby. I mean, they really had no way to distinguish between a ruby or a spinel or a garnet or any other red stone. So the actual technology to be able to do this wasn't until the 1800s. Yeah, that's when we started to understand a little bit more about chemical composition and crystal structure of gems. So before that, really nobody could tell the difference. So this one here, right in the very center, or not center, up at the top of the spinel, set into the spinel in a little piece of gold that surrounds it, is in fact a small ruby. And of course it's much, much smaller. And you might wonder, why did they put a little tiny ruby in there? This was actually a pendant. It was so big, it was a pendant, and therefore there was a hole running through it. And they decided to hide the hole, and one way to hide the hole is to put a nice ruby on top. So actually the Black Prince's ruby does have a ruby in it. It's that little tiny thing there. The rest of it is spinel. Okay, now why is ruby so expensive? Okay, one of the reasons why is when we talk about the chemical composition of corundum, which is the species, ruby is the only one that is colored by minute traces of chromium. And these are impurities, and they're very, very minute. So when we look at chemical composition, we don't notice that so easily. It's still going to be the same chemical composition, even though it has slight impurities. Everything is slightly impure. There's nothing that's absolutely 100% perfect. So it's very often impurities that can cause differences in color. And in this case, chromium is what is causing the red in the ruby. And by the way, it's also causing the green in the emerald. So it's another reason why emerald is also a very expensive gem. And that's because chromium is extremely rare in the earth. So it's not so easy to get that chemical composition with those particular minute traces of chromium. And that makes it a lot more rare in general. And so this is one of the reasons why ruby is definitely going to be more expensive than a lot of other materials due to these traces of chromium which are rare inside them. So let's look at color a minute. We've got a couple of very beautiful red stones here. But which one is really red? Is it the first one or is it the second one? Because there's a lot of people that say that one is red because we believe that color to be red. I mean, when we grow up, when we're in kindergarten, they put these little crayons in our hands that are that color, and they tell us it's red, and we're all coloring with that color, and we all think that color is red. Actually, this one is more red. So let's take a look. This is a color wheel. You see where red is? Then we have red orange. So red is right between red violet and red orange. And if we look at those two stones again, now you see the first one is actually truly red orange. And this one is what we would call a slightly violetish red. So this is the real red one. This is the red orange, and we call it a hue, right? All the different colors on the color wheel, we just call them different hues. And even these slight nuances in color can make a difference to the price of a gem. So for ruby, because color is very, very important, the color we're looking for is the violetish red. We're not looking for the red orange. In fact, red orange would be much less valuable than the violetish red. Now, some of you might have heard a term that is commonly used for Ruby. The best color for ruby. What is the best color for ruby? Well, a lot of people say pigeon's blood. Right? Now, I've never seen the blood of a pigeon. I don't kill pigeons. But if we do look at this, we can understand red with a bit of violet versus red with orange. And if you look at a color wheel, that makes it a little bit more clear. And it's better to describe it today in terms of the color theory rather than in terms of something nobody has ever seen. Now, we're not going to stop people from saying pigeon's blood is the best color for ruby, but you know, it is a very old-fashioned and old-world term, especially if we haven't seen it. Okay, now other than hue, we need to consider tone and saturation, because color is not just hue. And so tone is when we look at something that's either too dark or too light. Now, when you have a gemstone that's too dark, it isn't better. I've seen a lot of people buy sapphires, really dark blue sapphires, and they come and say, oh, isn't this lovely? If it's so dark that you can't see it's blue, how is that lovely? We want to be able to see the color. If the color is the most important of all four factors, then we need to see it. And so the minute your gemstone starts getting to the point where it's difficult to see the color, maybe you need a pen light to shine on it or through it to be able to see the color, then of course that's not good color at all. All right, then the price drops down dramatically. And if it's too light, it can even change the name of a gemstone. We all know that ruby is not pink. Pink is when you take red and you add white to it. So if we have a pink material, then it's probably not got any chromium in it, not likely, and it ends up being a pink sapphire because it's the same material as a ruby, but it doesn't qualify as a ruby. So that, of course, is going to affect the price of it dramatically. And then we could have gemstones that are very dull. And dull could mean that the color itself is not vibrant, it's not strong. It can either be weak, very wishy-washy color, or it could be that the color is modified by, say, grayish or brownish. Now, this has got a lot of brown in it. It's a kind of a browny, reddish color, and that is not good. So we want to stay away from anything with brownish. Remember, brown is officially not a color either. Brown is when a warm color desaturates. So, desaturation, too light, too dark, all of these things are going to cause the value to drop. We want to make sure that we get something like this, which is vibrant, which is strong. And so the best color is a violetish red. We want to have it with a medium tone, which means not too light, not too dark. And we want to have it with a strong saturation, which means strong, vivid color, very noticeable, very bright, no brown, no gray, really, really beautiful color. So that is what we look for when we're buying a good. Now, are we going to find a lot of stones like this out there on the market? You might find them, but if you find them, they're going to be expensive, right? Especially in any large size, because rubies don't come in extremely large size. So stay away from the red-orange ones and have a look at the violetish red, which is a good color. Now, what about clarity? To get a flawless ruby is rare. Most of them are what we call a type 2. Type 2 means that if you look at the material, it's going to have something in it. You might not notice with your naked eye, but if you were to pick up a loupe and look at it with 10-power magnification, you would see something. And it would be expected to see something with 10-power magnification. So eye clean is what we generally get in rubies. That means that with your eye you might not notice, but with a loupe you will. And then we have included, which of course you can kind of see little bits and things in it. And these are what we call inclusions. We don't call them flaws. We don't call them imperfections. We don't like those terms. Why? Because today, if you've got something inside the material, this is actually going to be very helpful in distinguishing whether it is natural or synthetic. There are so many synthetics on the market today. There's all kinds of imitations, there's all kinds of things. So when we have something to find inside, it could lead us to whether it is natural or not. So we're not disappointed if we see inclusions in a ruby with a loop. In fact, we would expect it. That means that if somebody came to me with a nice big stone and said that, you know, this was a family heirloom, and I look at it and it looks clean, and then I whip out my loop and I look at it with my loop and I see nothing, big size, nothing, wonderful color, wow, it's either a museum piece or very, very expensive, or it could well be a synthetic. And that's what we do tend to think of nowadays if we see something that's a little too clean to believe. And with a type 2, we're not expecting it to be clean. All right? Obviously, the more inclusions that are visible, the lower the value it's going to be. All right. These are typical inclusions that we're going to find in rubies. We find little crystals. We call those included crystals. Those are sometimes so small you need to have a microscope to see them clearly. In some cases, they might look, you know, like things looking like little bubbles inside. Be careful. Don't call something a bubble if you can't see it clearly. All right? If you're talking about a gas bubble that is visible with the naked eye or with a loop, that's not something normally found in natural material. We do find some gas bubbles which under very high power magnification could be within a liquid, which is like a 2-phase inclusion or a 3-phase inclusion, but we are not likely to see gas bubbles, big ones, just like that with the naked eye or with a loop. And don't confuse stuff like this because it might look like a gas bubble, it might be an included crystal. So always double check with somebody who knows, who looks at, you know, inclusions, who understands inclusions, because they all look very similar if you've not looked at them often enough. We also get little fingerprints. We get silk, which are very small needles inside, and the more silk we get inside, usually a ruby or a sapphire, then that produces what we call a star sapphire, which is quite beautiful and quite special. Sometimes we get cracks, we also get fractures, and those also look a little bit like fingerprints inside the gem. So telling them apart is a little bit difficult, but with good magnification, like a microscope, then you can really look closely at those kinds of things. And when it comes to cut, if we look at the rough material, there you can see a 13.43 carat. When we do cut it, and even if we maximize the weight from the rough, which means we really try to get the biggest possible piece from it, we're only going to get about a 7.525 yield. And that's because we have to consider how we're going to cut it. We consider if it's going to be faceted or not. We consider the crown, the pavilion, the depth of all of these things, all of those things have to be taken into consideration, but there's a lot of loss. And people don't realize how much loss of weight there is when we cut gemstones. You know, it's very typical that we can even have 50 to 60% loss in cutting a gem. Sometimes the very lower grade one, I mean, if some material becomes more and more opaque, then it's not really worth putting the facets on it. Facets take time and effort to put onto the material. It's costly to put the facets on. They're all done by hand still today. There's no such thing as throwing it in a machine, glug, 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 bing, comes out ready with, you know, 57 to 58 facets. It doesn't happen. So when material is more opaque, they're going to do some beautiful carving on it. And that adds value to it by doing the carving. And also another way is to make it into a bead, which is also popular if it gets to an opaque form. Now this can also be faceted. You can have faceted opaque beads, also possible today. I mean, they're very creative today with all kinds of different possibilities when it comes to cut. But ultimately, what we're looking for is always to maximize the weight from the rough with every piece, because it's expensive material. So if we look at carat weight, we say up to 2 carats commercially readily available, all right? So up to 2 carats, we can find it quite easily today. Beyond that, now we're getting to pricing going up like crazy. So very commonly we call this points. When you look at the small ones, if it's less than a carat, so the first one is 15 points, and then we've got 33 points, 50 points, that's half a carat. And going up here, you can see up to 165. So these could all be found. Finest quality in any size is actually relatively rare.
Before you go on to the next one,
Yes.
can I give you this? Can I also ask a question from the YouTube chat?
Yes.
Are there any special considerations when cleaning rubies? For example, when you were doing the beryl session, you said that they oiled emeralds,
Yeah.
and you had to be careful not to put them in an ultrasonic.
Yes.
Is there anything we need to worry about when we're thinking about rubies in terms of how they're cleaned?
Absolutely, you really do need to be careful with all gemstones today. There is, I would say, a majority of gemstones on the market, especially commercial gemstones, ones that are affordable, they have been treated in some way, shape, or form. So it used to be emeralds were the typical one that were oiled. But already for years, they've been oiling rubies, they've been oiling sapphires, they've been oiling a lot of things. They've been oiling opals. I mean, I've seen a lot of material being oiled today. So definitely don't use ultrasonic cleaners for your jewelry, because you can do a lot of damage with those tools. And you want to, in fact, the next talk is on cleaning. So, but I will just say this, is that whatever gem you have, if you use a very soft toothbrush, like a baby's toothbrush, or you use a complexion brush that is clean, and you use a mild non-detergent, then with that, it should be safe enough to clean all jewelry and gems. All right, not hot water, just regular tap water, mild non-detergent, very soft brush, and brush it everywhere. Top, bottom, sides, everywhere you can get in under, and rinse it very, very well. All right? Okay, so let's take a look now at some sources. So we know that Burma and, of course, Sri Lanka are some of the typical sources, and have been sources for years. I've also put a star stone there because we do get a lot of star rubies from both Burma and from Sri Lanka. Now, Burma deposits are over 1,000 years old. They're the primary ones. The finest rubies have come from there and have been considered from there. Usually they have very, very strong red with red fluorescence. Now, not all rubies have red fluorescence, but the ones from the Burmese do. And the finest star rubies are also coming from Burma. Then we have Sri Lanka. They do have some very good rubies in Sri Lanka. Top grade reds, indistinguishable from Burmese. So it's quite possible to buy an absolutely fabulous looking ruby for less. Your price is definitely going to be more for the Burmese than it is for the Sri Lanka. So you could get something that looks comparable. A lot of them tend to be more violet. They're also fluorescent, which is interesting. And also we have a lot of asterism, right? But at the bottom there, it says provenance is very important, because today, and it's mainly in the last 10 years that provenance has made a difference. People are starting to put on certificates where the gemstones are coming from. And people are requesting, where is this from? And you will find that there are higher prices from specific areas than others. So it is important to look at where the gems are coming from today. Now, I know a lot of people who sell gems that get very upset with that. And they say, no, mine's as beautiful. It's not a Burmese, but it's just as beautiful as a Burmese. So why should it be less valuable? That's a good question. Why should it be less valuable? Well, there's still people that put a lot of what's the word for it?
Importance, or?
Yeah, importance to provenance. And that has been in recent years more than any other. Okay, let's look at another one, which is that the fact that these two places are not the only places. We have Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Nepal. They're all producing very nice rubies, right? Now, would you be able to tell the difference between, say, a Cambodian and a Thai ruby? Some people say, oh yes, I can tell the difference. The Thai rubies and the Cambodian rubies are a little bit darker. Any ruby can be dark. We can get dark Burmese rubies as well. So quite frankly, you cannot tell the difference just looking at it. You really, the only way today that they're able to tell where these ones are from, I mean, either it's because they were there at the mine, they know where it came, which mine it came from, or they've got to use very sophisticated equipment which is able to assess which trace elements are in that material, because certain areas would have different trace elements which show up on the equipment. And that's really the only way. It's not easy. It's not something we can look at and tell. Now, long time ago, we had a very important gemologist called Gublin. And he was one of the first gemologists ever to be able to look at a sapphire and say, this sapphire is from this location. And he knew it because of the types of inclusions that were inside the gem. But I have to say, things have become so much more complex today, and it's not getting easier. It's only getting more difficult. We're getting so many more places that we're finding these things, and some of them might have very similar looking inclusions. So honestly, we can't tell by inclusions anymore. We really need to go to the greater depth of having the instruments that can assess those trace elements that might be there. So where else? Well, we've also got African rubies. So the ones that are coming from Kenya and Tanzania, they are quite rare, but strong fluorescence, just like the Burmese, but they don't have any starstones there, right? But still, the rubies from Kenya and Tanzania are quite nice. If you can find them, if you can get them, because they're not as common, then they are nice material. And of course, we got Mozambique. These were found in 2009, so you can see how recently we found these. And they're becoming a very important source right now, all right? The colors of Burmese and Thai, very close and available in a wide range of sizes. So there are people out there looking for the Mozambique rubies currently. We also have Madagascar, of course, and Madagascar has very good clarity, but they tend to be color zoned, which means that the color is not as even as we would like it to be. Sometimes you see these very kind of faint lines running through. So they're a lot more difficult to cut. In order to cut them just right so that you don't see the color zoning, might waste a lot more of the material, which is a shame. That way, many are heat treated instead of, they still want to maximize the weight from the rough, so they'll heat treat them instead. But it is possible to get good, fine quality, unheated material from Madagascar as well. And surprisingly, other places, Australia. We think of Australia for sapphires, for opals, for stuff like that. We don't usually think of Australia for rubies. But in Queensland, or in the east of Australia, we have found some rubies, and the color is not really that great. The clarity is also not very comparable. So I won't say they're the best of the best, but they do have some rubies. And another place, just in case you didn't know, USA definitely has rubies. It's amazing what USA has. They have so many interesting gems. And in that part of the world, there's a lot of places you can actually go and visit. You can go and see the mines, which is a really nice thing to be able to do. It's more accessible than in some other countries. So Montana, North Carolina, and Wyoming have found rubies, mostly from 2017, so not that long ago. And all of the mining in these three places are environmentally responsible mining, which of course today is a big thing. So if you're looking for a nice ruby and it means to you to have environmentally responsible mining and everything else, then this would be the location for you to look at to buy. And would they be terribly expensive? Actually, definitely not anywhere near as expensive as the Burmese or some of the others that we've spoken about. Even the Mozambique would be more expensive usually than these. So good human rights record, trackable mine to market. You know, all of that is very important today to a lot of customers that are buying the gems. All right, now this is the most expensive ruby. Burmese, very beautiful, exceptional color. We can see that it's got very good clarity, which is unusual, and at 25.59 carats. Wow, this is extraordinary. There aren't too many found in this size. Would you like to know the price of this stone? I'm sure everyone wants to know the price of it. Okay, let's take a look. It's called the Sunrise Ruby. It was auctioned by Sotheby's, bought by Cartier in 2015. It was for a mere $30.3 million. Wow. And of course, yes, it is a whole ring with some diamonds attached and everything else. But in general, we're looking about 1.2 million per carat, just to give you a kind of a rough estimate there. Wow, that is. But of course, when are you going to find another 25 carat stone? And latest one is from 2023. Wow, this was found. It was actually found in 2022, but it had made a new record, and this one is from Mozambique. You can see how beautiful that is. Absolutely beautiful. It looks like a Burmese ruby. It could get away. You could really look at it. And this one's 55.22 carats. Wow, huge. So this one made it at 34.8 million. I'm talking US there. You can see I've converted it to Singapore, more or less. So they've given it a name, Estrella de Fura, and Fura is the place where it was found. It is the name of the mine where it was found. So Estrella means star of that particular mine. So some amazing prices there, which brings us to the crazy price of ruby. All right, now if you look at this one, which is just ruby heat treated, which is the typical ruby that's on the market today. I'm not talking about other types of treatment. I'm just talking about natural with heat treatment, which is very standard, but very good color. All right. If you look at the first row, and let's just take the VVS, which means it's got good clarity, you can see that a 50 point is already around 1,005 to 6,005 per carat. Right, so per carat, if it's 1,005, you just basically divide that in two if you've got a 50 point. So you have to multiply your carat weight by that per carat price. Now, if you come down, of course, these prices go mad as you get further up, and you can see a 5 carat and above, we're looking at 20,000 to 35,000 for 5 carats and above. And of course, the huge ones, just the price is obviously a very special price because they're so rare. Now, that's the regular ones we find on the market today. I thought I would put here the Burma Ruby unheated. Very good color. Yes, gasp. Yes, look at these prices, all right? Really good clarity, really good color. A 50 point, 10,000 to 80. Wow, that's astounding, right? It's an amazing price. And where did I get this? These are published. These are price guides. And basically, when you look for these things, you do need to subscribe to them. So I'm actually subscribing to this particular one at this moment in time, and that's why I get it. And these are going to change. So we're looking at it today, but who knows next week or next month if those numbers are going to be the same. It's going to very much depend on the market and how the gems are buying and selling. So over here you see 5+ carats, you've got 100,000 to 180,000 per carat. So big prices, big prices. Okay, now let's move on to Corundum. And Corundum is basically the family name for both ruby and sapphire, and we call it the species. Corundum is the species, and ruby and sapphire are the varieties. So if you think of it this way, that in a family, everybody has a family name, and everyone in the family has that name. And then you have all the different members that, because they look different, they have their own name, and they go by their names. And the same applies to gems. The species you have to look at the chemical composition and the crystal structure, because a species is defined by its chemical composition and crystal structure. So that means rubies and all sapphires have that same chemical composition and same crystal structure. So that's what makes them within the same family. And then we have sapphire, which everybody thinks of as a blue material, but actually sapphire isn't necessarily blue. Sapphire is all other colors but not ruby, right? So ruby is one variety. Sapphire can be many colors, and you should, when you say sapphire, you should actually qualify what kind of sapphire is it? Is it a yellow sapphire, a green sapphire, an orange sapphire, a pink sapphire? You know, it makes a difference. And all these are at different prices too, interestingly enough. So we even have a colorless sapphire to look like diamond. Question?
Just before you go too far into sapphires, we had an interesting question on pricing.
Yes.
And because of the time delay on YouTube, it came up a few minutes late.
Okay.
But the question was from David, and it was, does the shape of the gemstone affect the price? So for example, would a teardrop shape or a round or an Asher cut be more or less valuable, or is it really just the color and the whether it's heat treated or not, and then the clarity?
It's a difficult question to answer, but I would say that it does affect, the shape does affect, but at the end of the day, they're always trying to maximize the weight from the rough. You know, when they make very fancy shapes, it's not normal to make really fancy shapes because you're going to waste more valuable material. And in what I know, that the only time that they make these very fancy shapes is either because they've had a request for that particular one and the person is going to pay extra for that wastage, or it's because maybe there's something that was causing it to be ugly. Maybe there was a crack, a fracture, or an inclusion that they wanted to remove, and therefore they removed that section and they ended up making it into a pear shape. So in some cases, it can cause the value to be higher, and in some cases it can just be something that ends up maximizing the weight from the rough and making the most beautiful piece from the shape. So if it is very specifically cut to that shape, I would say yes, there's going to be a premium most likely on that stone for the shape. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, so we were saying that ruby stands out from the rest of them. Why is ruby not called red sapphire if they're all in the same family, right? And the reason ruby is not called red sapphire is because of that chromium impurity. None of the others have it. All the others are colored by mainly iron and titanium. And so that's why they're all lumped into one category and ruby is separate. It's not because it was the firstborn, it's not because it was the first one found, but it's because of that very rare chromium element in it. That is really what's happening. Okay, now if we look at the blue sapphire, which a lot of people do love, and they're very, very popular. I love blue sapphire as well, and especially when you get something this beautiful color. The Burmese, again, very highly prized, and why? Because they've been known for centuries, because people have always looked for them. You will find that prices are 50 to 100% higher than Sri Lankan and Madagascan, when the Sri Lankan and Madagascan can look exactly the same. Surprisingly, so you are paying more for the Burmese. And then of course we have Kashmir. Now Kashmir sapphire is from India, and this one has an elite status. When people are looking for Kashmir sapphires, they are really looking for top quality. They are no longer being found and mined, right? Deposits were exhausted by the 1920s. So actually the price on these things can be as crazy as ruby. Maybe not as crazy as ruby, but almost as crazy as ruby due to their rarity. They can be even 10 times higher. So when you look at a beautiful blue sapphire, have you any indication whether it's Burmese, whether it's a Kashmir sapphire, whether it's Sri Lankan, Madagascan, Australian? Again, it's not easy to see it. Some people say, oh, but the cashmere sapphire has this very kind of misty look to it, which is a really velvety look. I mean, it's a very, not a great way to describe it, and not something that a lot of people can understand and see if they haven't seen it. They have to have seen it to be able to understand that. So ultimately, when you're buying, you need to ask these questions. Your questions are, you know, is it natural, first of all? Has it had any treatments? Because when you ask, is it a natural material, people are not going to answer that question as, yes, I'll tell you everything about it. What they're going to answer is, yes, this is a natural material versus it's not a synthetic material. But you still have to ask, okay, does it have any treatments? Because that is a different question. So the treatments, a lot of gems are treated today. Standard practice, absolutely, heat treating of most gems is as common as me putting foundation, mascara, and lipstick on, right? It is just something that it's done today. So do ask those questions. Now, Sri Lankan, Madagascan, and Australian sapphires, and there are other places. We do get Thai sapphires, we do get others, but they're just not so popular. I would say that a lot of people know the Sri Lankan, and now the Madagascan are coming up in the market and very strong. And I wanted to highlight the Australian ones because some people like the Australians because they are a little bit more greenish. They have a kind of greenish tint to them. Now that's not great in as far as when we look for good color in a sapphire. It's a very personal preference at the end of the day. Some people say they just want to see blue. But like the ruby, you could just see red, or you could have a very slight tint of violetish red, and that improves the color and it improves the value of the stone. So for the blue sapphire, the violetish blue is usually considered the better quality. The greenish blue is not considered as good a quality. The Sri Lankan typically come in very light blue. Now, I have a real love of the light blue ones. I think they're beautiful. I don't dislike the light blue ones at all. They don't look at all like aquamarines or topaz in any way. It's a different blue. It's a very different blue from those. But I don't dislike it. However, remember we said that the lighter it gets, the darker it gets, the further away from a medium tone, the less valuable it's going to be. So that, for that reason, usually, even though they can be very beautiful, the lighter ones are not so expensive. And in Sri Lanka, they do produce a lot of the light ones, and they also have some very large sizes, which is quite interesting. Madagascar, indistinguishable from Sri Lanka. They do look very similar. Of course, they are close. The distance is very close too. And they can look also like cashmere sapphire. So I put this one here to show you how similar it looks to the cashmere sapphire. And finally, we said the greenish blue. Can you look into that stone? Can you see the greenish tint? There's a little bit of a greenish tint there. Now, obviously on a slide, it's not so easy to see. If I could move the stone around a little bit, then you'd probably see flashes of violet or flashes of green, or no flashes of green, no flashes of violet, just complete and utter beautiful blue. But it's a bit more difficult on the slide to see those. So the thing about the Australian sapphires is that there are plentiful. There are lots of them, and a lot of this particular greenish blue type, and sometimes even more green. So again, the greenish tends to make it, well, we could say very affordable, right? So if you really wanted some very affordable material, then this material is very affordable. All right, price of cashmere sapphire. Let's have a quick look at it. 1 to 2 carats. Wow, interesting. Come up to 4 carats and above. Very high. Let's look at the price of regular sapphires. And when I say regular sapphires, these could be, you know, just the Sri Lankan, the Madagascan. You know, Burmese are also kind of a little higher than this. And so if you look at a 1 carat there, you can see the prices are much more affordable. Much more affordable. You look at a 4 carat, well, we're still looking at high prices, but nowhere near cashmere. Now, I know that some of you want to know, so what's the difference between a cashmere and a ruby? All right, the blue sapphire and the ruby. So I thought I would put that on a slide for you. Oh, that slide comes up later. So let's have a look at some of the other colors first. Pink, very good color, pink. So half a carat to 75 points. We are looking at 300 to 675 per carat. That's pretty decent, but it is a small stone. As you go up, 1 carat, 1,008. So they're not cheap. And if you get 2 carats and above, 8,400 per carat. So again, you had to double that, obviously, at 2 carats. So, you know, we are looking at pinks as being quite valuable as well. The yellows, not quite as valuable as the pinks. You notice that we have less columns here. Again, it's not that we find as many. Maybe there's more, we have more variety in size in the pinks. Maybe we don't have as many varieties in the yellow sapphire. And in fact, a lot of the yellow sapphires that we have on the market today are irradiated. So they're not natural yellow colors. And these we're talking about natural color here. Yeah. And so then we have purple sapphires, which are maybe not as popular, but they're not bad prices either. They're a little bit less than the pinks, but a little bit more than the yellows. And the greens, much lower. Now it's interesting how people are not that fond of the green unless it's the emerald green. The emerald green is a very special color. So when you have other colors in green, there's a lot of people that do like greens. I mean, if you look at tourmalines come in every shade of green, and they can be absolutely beautiful. But even green tourmalines are not hugely expensive today. So green is an interesting color. If you like it, you're going to get a good price on it. So let's look at the difference now between the Burma ruby and the Kashmir sapphire. I just thought I would show you because who wins? Ruby still wins. Yep. And also, again, look, we get the rubies in the smaller sizes, and then we have a lot more options here. We have fewer options that we are likely to find here. But prices, you can see, are very, very different. It's only 4 carats plus. That's already 5 carats, so 3 to 4. So 75 to 100 versus only 51,000. So big difference there. And, well, if you're looking for something really valuable, you could choose between whether you want the ruby or the Kashmir. Yes?
Do you have any sense for whether the multicolored sapphires are more or less valuable? Do they kind of combine some of the values of these? They have things called like party sapphires.
It's interesting. When I started back in 1980, I had a dealer that approached me, and he showed me a box of very beautiful gems, and they were multicolored. They were yellow on one side, and then in the middle they were green, and then at one end they were blue. And he said, "Do you like these?" And I said, "Yes, they're beautiful. What are they?" And he said, "These are sapphires." And of course I was very fresh, very new in the industry. I had no idea, what they were. And he said, "I can't sell them. I can't sell them to anyone." And he said, "Would you like them?" And I still have them today. And I absolutely adore them. I've loved them, all this time. And in those days, you couldn't sell them. Today, people are beginning to see what are the other options, what are other varieties. We're beginning to see that we do have multicolored ones. And the prices on the multicolored ones have gone up recently. In the last maybe 5 years, we've seen prices go up. So what I was given for nothing because it was unsellable in those days, today has some value, which is really, really interesting. Of course, I had to wait 40 years, but still, I mean, it's interesting. It's really interesting. So I can't tell you the prices because I didn't actually look them up. I don't remember the prices in my head for these things. I'm not buying and selling sapphires or rubies, so I would have to look it up. But I am sure that you can still buy them at affordable prices because not everybody is looking for them. There isn't a huge interest in them, but what I can say is that, they are more interesting today than they were 40 years ago. And so they do have some value. So if you find that you've got multicolored sapphires, don't throw them away. Don't give them away. Keep them because you might find that they do gain in value. Yeah.
How about the prices of the, I think this one, but
Yes, so we are now going to go to the special ones. This is another variety, another family member which is not as well known as sapphire or ruby. This is also a very beautiful gem, and it is called a Padparadscha. Now, the Padparadscha was first found in Sri Lanka, and it has a good history in Sri Lanka, and many of the best ones are coming from there, although we have found in other countries nowadays, we have found also Padparadscha. But the word Padparadscha is a very strange word. It comes from the lotus flower, and it's the color of that lotus. If you look at the lotus flower, it has pink, but it also has orange. And so a true Padparadscha needs to be a combination of both pink and orange together. Unfortunately, online today, there's a lot of people saying it's a Padparadscha, and they're trying to sell either pink one, or they're trying to sell an orange one. Now, pink is nice, but it's not going to be anywhere near the price of a Padparadscha, because when you have both colors together, for that one, the price is much, much higher. And so they're trying to pass off something that is just pink or just orange, and they're trying to pass it off as a Padparadscha. So be careful, because it shouldn't qualify as a Padparadscha unless it has both of those colors. Now, whether it has more of one or more of the other, it's okay. And you could say that's a personal preference. Oh, I prefer the ones that are more pinkish, or I prefer the ones that are more orangey. No issue. But if it's just pink or if it's just orange, then how does that qualify? It's a bit like saying pink qualifies as ruby. No, it doesn't. Pink has never qualified as ruby. It has to be red to qualify as ruby. All right, so looking at the prices of Padparadschas, and we said that Sri Lanka is the main source, but you can see we've also found them in Madagascar today, and in Tanzania and Vietnam. So it's possible to get them from other places. So the price of really fine ones, good ones, rival fine blue sapphire, which is very interesting. They are 20% less for other countries, so if you get them from Madagascar or Tanzania or Vietnam, you can get them for a little less, which is also great. But we do need to be careful, because already for over 10, 12 years, they have been doing a lot of treatments on Padparadscha. And in fact, we have this lattice of beryllium treatment, diffusion treatment that is done. It's not easy to detect. You wouldn't be able to see it. You wouldn't know it. So if you are buying a Padparadscha, make sure you ask, number one, is it natural? Number two, has it had any treatments? What treatments has it had? And try to get one that has a proper recognized certificate, all right? A certificate from a recognized gemological authority that has done the testing, right? Not just a small lab in some place that's unknown, but a proper well-known laboratory, because unfortunately that's what it takes when you're buying gemstones of this caliber. If they're going to be expensive, then you need to have a proper certificate with it. All right, a lot of them can be heat treated. Again, how are you going to tell if it's heat treated? We have heat in the earth as well. We don't know if it was heated before or if it was heated after, but with sophisticated equipment, the labs can tell. They can do that already. They've been doing it for years. So again, if we look at the prices, not too bad for 1 carat. When you come up to 4 carats plus, well, prices really do jump. And as I said, if it's from the other countries, it's about 20% less than this. So I thought I would show you some nice Padparadsschas. Look at that. That's a gorgeous one. This one's Sri Lankan, and very good clarity, only 8 carats. 780,000, wow. Okay, it's also a ring, it's also got some diamonds with it, so it's a bit difficult to say per carat, but I just did a quick conversion there for you to see a per carat price. But we do have to remember that it's not really the per carat price because of all the rest that is with it. But this was auctioned in 2017 for that price, so it's quite recent. And let's look at another absolutely beautiful one, 2.4 million. Yeah. So these things are really for collectors and connoisseurs. All right, this one was auctioned by Christie's also November 2017. So what you're seeing here, 2017, we already had a great interest in Padparadscha. A lot of people looking for Padparadscha right now. And of course, the more people that are looking for it, the prices tend to go up, the more people that know about it. So I don't want to say we've missed the bus on this one, but you know, had you bought a Padparadscha maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you could have bought it for much more reasonable prices than buying it today. And this one here, that's beautiful. Now that's very pink, but it does have a lot of orange in it. Again, if you compare that on a color wheel, you will see that it is a very orangey pink. So this one's an unusual shape, and 12.94 carats. Again, the reason why these are so expensive is due to their size as well. And if it's got good clarity, even more reason for. So it's not just about color, although color is one of the main features. The clarity is also important, and even the cut can play into that. This one is auctioned in 2016. And this one, gorgeous stone, absolutely gorgeous. Again, 2017, 103,000, which is amazing. And this one here is a 10 carat, very lovely stone. So we've seen some record prices for Padparadscha recently in the last few years. There's another one, 30 carats. This one I think was a steal, an absolute steal. But again, remember, you don't see a lot of diamonds with it. So this one is more indicative of just the gold price and the Padparadscha price. This one again, 2017. So you'll see a lot of interest right now in the Padparadscha. So in conclusion, Corundum is an amazing family, an amazing species, which offers all kinds of varieties in so many different colors, and also not just exciting colors, but in all price points. So actually it is a gem that's accessible to everyone. We didn't talk a lot about the colorless ones. The colorless ones are also very much looking like diamond. I've seen so many people have a colored center stone and then surround the center stone with the colorless sapphire. And they do sparkle, they look great. They're just much cheaper than diamonds. So, and quite frankly, if you never clean your diamonds, then your diamonds aren't going to look much better than the colorless sapphires. So really it's a family that has something for everybody in it. And I hope you enjoyed the information. Fantastic.
We had
Great.
One question.
Yes.
You mentioned a lot of time about heat treatment and
Yes.
non-heat treatment.
Yes.
What exactly happened by saying that this gem is heat treated?
Well, when gems come out of the ground, they don't all come out of the ground absolutely fantastic. It's quite possible that the color is not as nice as it could be, or even that the clarity is not as nice as it could be. And what they've discovered over thousands of years, because heat treatment of gems started 2000 BCE. Yes, long time ago. They've been experimenting all this time with heat treatment. And what they realize is that if you heat treat a gem, and it can't be done quickly, usually it's you have to ramp up, you have to hold, you have to ramp again, you have to hold. There are sequences that they know for different stones that they're going to use that will possibly cause the color to improve, possibly even cause the clarity to improve. And with as much experience as they have now, they're very good at doing it. So we can't pretend that everything is going to come out perfect. We know nothing, very, very little comes out perfect. The rarest ones are the ones that are perfect. And they are going to be the ones that really are the most expensive. The majority are going to have some kind of treatment. So is it a sophisticated treatment? Well, today they've been able to they understand what to do. There are many companies doing it. Early on, and even in Sri Lanka today, we went on a trip to Sri Lanka in 2017, and we saw people sitting cross-legged and with a fire, and they were literally heating the gems just with a fire and blowing. So, I mean, it could be so unsophisticated that it costs virtually nothing except a person sitting there for hours and hours blowing. Or it could be something with proper kilns, with understanding the different types of heat and when and what levels they have to get to. So ultimately, you know, everybody's got their secret recipe. I can't tell you much more than that, but it is a common, very common thing. And as I said earlier, because we can't really tell, I mean, there's nothing when you look at it with a loupe, you can't honestly tell with a loupe if something is heat treated. You have to have microscopes, you have to have much more sophisticated equipment, because heat is heat. Heat can be in the ground as well. So it's not easy to determine. Great.
We had one more question from Firum on online. He was saying he wanted to buy the rubies from a wholesaler.
Yes.
And was interested to know if the wholesaler would be able to tell him about the mine and about whether it was ethically mined or things like that. What, in your experience, for colored gemstones, do wholesalers have access to when they're selling?
Yeah, so here's the thing. The word wholesaler is a very interesting word. And in most places, wholesale means you're buying in quantity. It either means that you are buying, you know, many, or that you're buying, spending a lot of money for it. All right? I don't know any other industry where wholesale means you can buy one. So my question, first of all, would be, are you buying one ruby from this person, or are you buying a whole bunch of them, right? So, because it doesn't really make sense that somebody would ever sell to you wholesale if you're buying one gem. So I already have an issue with that, because somebody who says they're a wholesaler and they're going to sell you one piece, I mean, how is that working?
Or maybe they're a gem dealer. Maybe they're not necessarily
dealer,
selling finished jewelry.
You know, there are people who are dealers that are simply trading. They're just buying from people and selling again. And then you've got the ones that are connected somehow to the mines, and then they would maybe know a little bit more about the mines. They would know, you know, if it was directly from the mine, if it did have any treatments. I mean, if something is being sold to you and there is no certificate with it that has any proof of natural origin and natural no treatments, then how are you going to trust that? I mean, how well do you know this person? If it was a person that I had known forever, you know, when we talk about jewelers buying jewelry, jewelers don't buy from people who approach you on internet. Jewelers don't buy from people who come with a briefcase and open it and say, you want to buy a gem? Or a coat and open the coat and say, you want to buy a gem, right? They're buying from people that their father bought from, who their father bought from, who their father bought. These are well-known, trusted people that they trust, that they don't even have to ask, because they know that when they buy it, they're going to be told. Because that supplier has been a supplier for years, and there is a trust there that exists that is not going to be broken. And unfortunately, if we're not in the industry, if we're just kind of buying from whoever says they're a dealer or a wholesaler, I don't see there's any basis for it. I would be very skeptical. Because again, buying things online, these kind of things, and especially valuable ones, you need to see it. You can't just buy it with a photograph. You know, there's things that people are doing today. They're sending out the WhatsApps with, they show you the gem on the hand, or they show you, you know, the gem, beautiful color, and you know, all kinds of lightings, but you're still seeing it on a screen. It doesn't always look the same when you see it in person. And I can say, hundreds of students that have come to me and said, look, I bought this, what do you think? And they show me, and the color's not very nice, right? And usually I'm polite, But I will say, if the color is not very nice, they will say the color is not very nice. It's not the best color. But then they pull out their phone and they say, look, this is what they said it was. This is what it looked like, right? And this is what I got. And whoa, there is a big difference between what you see on the screen and what you see in your hand. So I would be careful. I would highly recommend you don't buy too much on internet if it's valuable. If it's just, $100, $200, you like it and you can take that risk, then no issue. But if you're looking for good quality, and if you really want to save up and get something really good, then see it before you buy it. It's something that if you're going to have it forever, it's like a relationship, right? You want to see it before you commit to it. Yeah. So that would be my suggestion. Wholesale, again, I'm not very enchanted with the word wholesale if you're buying one piece. If you're buying huge packets of stuff or lots of material, then maybe the word wholesale does come into it. And then again, you need to do some research. Where does this person come from? You should know the person a little bit more before you embark on giving them your money, unless it's little money or unless it's something that you can afford to lose. Yeah.
Great. Any more questions? No? Okay, yes.
How do you tell the difference between natural? Okay, a natural and how do you tell the difference between a lab-grown and a natural sapphire? Well, one of the main differences is the inclusions. Unfortunately, you're not always going to see inclusions. Sometimes with a 10-power loop, you might see nothing in the material. So at the end of the day, we have to rely on the labs, right? It is better to take it to a lab and let the lab tell you whether it is lab-grown or not. Unfortunately, synthetics are really well made today. We have cheap synthetics that tend to be very, very clean. We have mediocre synthetics which have some inclusions which are distinguishable. And then we have the really good synthetics which are indistinguishable, and there's no other way than to go to the lab and have them look at it. So if it were that simple that a synthetic has gas bubbles and we can see the gas bubbles and that's easy enough, but it's not. It's really not, right? Especially with corundum, because they've been making synthetic corundum since the late 1700s, and it became commercially available in the 1800s. So that's a long time to have been practicing with synthetic corundum. Yeah, so I think that better to go to a lab today. Yes, somebody else had a question?
I had one quick last one online.
Yeah.
The prices, are they US dollars or Singapore dollars on the charts that you
They
had?
were US dollars, yes. I'm
US
sorry, I didn't
dollars.
write them down. They were US dollars.
Great.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Fabulous. Thank you, everybody. Remember that we have more of these sessions running, so if you're interested in our next one, which is how to care and clean your jewelry, that's going to be a really interesting one. You're welcome to join us here, or remember you can also join us online because we are simultaneously running these online. We have some fabulous ones, phenomena in gemstones. We also have some on how jewelry is designed using computers and how it's fabricated using traditional techniques. Lots of interesting stuff. And if you wanted to get to know more about the gemstones that Tanja was talking about, and you wanted a more structured program and more structured course, I wanted to share with you briefly a really good program that we have called Gem and Jewelry Trade Secrets.
You love gemstones and jewelry, but how much do you really know about the rare and beautiful materials that are in your jewelry box? Join me, Tanja Sadow, for a complete hands-on certification that is guaranteed to appreciate and buy jewelry. Start your journey by traveling to the source. Learn about gemstone origins, see how gems are mined, and how these extraordinarily valuable materials get to the market. You'll learn how to spot good quality gemstones and how to assess value factors for diamonds, colored stones, phenomenal gems, pearls, organic gemstones, and even jade. This comprehensive course gives you the knowledge and power to take control of your gem purchases if you're a collector or an enthusiast, or your sales process if you're a designer or a jewelry professional. Beyond understanding about the gemstones and common trade practices in the jewelry industry, you will also see and learn about imitations, synthetics, and treatments that are sometimes used to enhance or even to deceive. This popular course takes place in our Gem Vault, where participants are able to see and examine my collection of over 1,800 gems and jewelry pieces, which include rare and valuable specimens as well as common imitations found in the jewelry markets in the region. You will complete this course with a clear understanding of gem facts and will be able to avoid misconceptions that can lead to expensive mistakes when buying jewelry and gems. Here are some of the topics that we will cover in this exciting program. First, we'll learn about the wide variety of beautiful natural minerals and the many misconceptions which abound in this field, as well as how to classify and compare gemstones. Knowing more about these gems, we then learn to evaluate color, discover how clarity types are assessed, and see a wide range of cutting styles available in today's market. Diamonds are the next on our agenda. First, we'll understand the modern diamond trade and then gain in-depth knowledge about the 4 C's, which consists of color, clarity, cut, and carat weight, and which will be the most helpful during your next diamond purchase. Next, we'll explore important differences between natural diamonds, synthetic diamonds, and diamond simulants, as well as some tips that will help you in the identification of these gem materials. Pearls are seeing a resurgence in popularity. Our next stop is to discover the varieties of pearls available and their origins, as well as common imitations in the market and ways to identify them. Pearls also have some unique value factors that you need to know about, such as color, luster, shape, make, nacre thickness, and spotting. All of these significantly affect the price of pearls, and knowing them can help you make better buying decisions. Have you heard of asterism, chatoyancy, play of color, aventurescence, adulorescence, iridescence, or even labradorescence? These gemstone phenomena make certain gem materials really stand out from other gems, and knowing how to observe and evaluate these phenomena can help you to select the very best gemstone. Today, in Asia, no complete without an understanding of jade. This popular material has tremendous cultural significance, but it has also been misunderstood for millennia. Learn about jadeite, or fei chui, and nephrite, the 2 genuine forms of jade, and discover the many imitations available on the market today. Not all gemstones are minerals. Some gems are produced by living organisms. These are known as organic gems and have been appreciated by all cultures throughout time. Discover how gems like amber, jet, bone, ivory, shell, and even coral are used in jewelry today, and what to look out for when buying to ensure your purchases are responsible and sustainable. Our last stop is to understand the difference between imitations, synthetics, and assembled gemstones. Here you'll learn the importance of using the right equipment and techniques to test gems, and will appreciate the complexity of the expert field of gemology. Like all JDMIS courses, participants in the Gem and Jewellery Trade Secrets class receive everything they need to fully appreciate the gems, exhibits, and jewellery samples. This includes tools like the jeweler's loop and specialized pen lights and tweezers and gem cloths, as well as reference materials for all of the topics covered. Discover the sparkling world of gemstones and jewelry at JDMIS and see the gemstones in your own collection with a new appreciation. Find out more about the course Gem and Jewellery Trade Secrets at jdmis.edu.sg.
Joining us in Singapore, if you're a Singaporean or a permanent resident, you can get a Skills Future training grant that covers 50 to 70% of the course fees. If you're a Singaporean, you can also use your Skills Future credits, if you still have them, to pay for the remaining course fees. So with those two, the grant and the credit, you can actually cover a very substantial amount of the course fees. The course is partially online and partially in the classroom. We call it blended learning. This is actually really important to us because it gives us a chance to make sure that all of the important theory, all of the things that you might want to refer back to 6 months later or 2 years later, you have access to in an online portal, and you can go back and listen to again and again, or reference again when you need to. But then you also have all of the classroom experience where you get to see all of the colors, all of the inclusions, all of the differences, and really appreciate the stuff that you're otherwise looking at online that's difficult to discern if you don't have access to the gems themselves. Great, so with that, I'd like to thank everybody that's joined us from YouTube, and I'd like to wish you all a good evening. And then for those of you that are still here this evening, we have one more thing.